What's going on, everybody? Today we are going to be talking all things sleep. Now, in practice over the last 5 years, one of the biggest things I hear from patients is that they can't fall asleep. And so many people are taking so many different medications and supplements and trying all of this stuff to help them get to sleep. But what are we actually doing from a lifestyle standpoint that's helping to support normal sleep rhythms and normal sleep patterns? There's a lot that goes into sleep. And if we don't start thinking about our sleep routine until right before we get into bed, by that point, it's too late. We have to start thinking about that sleep routine starting first thing in the morning when we wake up. So today we're going to dive into all sorts of cool things. We're going to talk about the 8 best things that you can start to do on a regular basis to help support your normal sleep routine and why those things are actually going to help with that. As many of these things as you can incorporate into your daily basis or daily routine are going to be the best. So try to get as many of these tips and tricks integrated into your life as you can. And I hope that this really helps with sleep. If you have questions and things throughout the video, feel free to drop comments down below. I'll do my best to get a response to those comments as quickly as I can. As far as supplements go, we will talk about a couple supplements here at the end of the video. I don't want you jumping forward to the end of the video to see the supplements. I don't want you doing any supplements or anything like that to help with sleep unless you've gotten as many of these other things incorporated into your life as you can. The reality is, if you take a supplement and it helps you fall asleep, that's great. But if you take the supplement away and you can't sleep, then what have we really done? We haven't really done anything to fix the problem. All we've done is just cover up the issue. Now, that can be very helpful in the short term because sleep is super important. Sleep is when your body heals and repairs itself. It's when you integrate. It's where we do a lot of our very important life and bodily functions. However, if we're just taking supplements to cover up the fact that we can't sleep, we're missing the underlying issues that are going on, and we always want to dig down into those issues. So from a integrating things into your life standpoint, we're going to talk about a couple different things today. We're going to talk about the effect of light, whether it's blue light, whether it's sunlight, whether it's sunrises and sunsets. We're going to talk about all the different types of light. We're going to talk about intentionality when it comes to sleep and really protecting that last hour of sleep before bedtime. We're going to talk about avoiding caffeine and the effect of caffeine on your brain and how that affects your sleep. We'll talk about decreasing room temperature and what that room temperature should be at night. We'll talk about movement a little bit. We're not going to dive a ton into specific exercise, just the importance of movement throughout the day. We'll talk about diet and nutrition a little bit as it relates into sleep, some breath work and meditation. And then again, at the end, we will talk about a couple of the most common supplements that I recommend to patients who have tried all this other stuff and still can't sleep. So stay tuned. First thing we're going to talk about here is light. So we're all pretty familiar with light. We see light every single day. And really all light is different wavelengths that are being emitted from the sun. Light is energy. And our body responds to light. So we obviously think about light and think about our eyes. That our eyes are going to pick up the things that are happening around us all throughout the day. But we have different functions and different receptors in our eyes, and specific ones that respond to wavelengths of light. So they did a really cool study where they took mice that were genetically programmed to be blind, and then they put them in an environment where they had no sunlight all day long, and then they had different varying degrees of sunlight. And the mice who were blind were still able to sleep and wake at normal rhythms, and that's because we have separate photoreceptors on the back of our eyes that are outside of our normal vision receptors. So even if you can't see, your body is still going to be able to respond to the light in the environment through those very important photoreceptors. So when we talk about light, one of the most common things that we can talk about first is blue light. Almost everybody should be familiar at this point in time with blue light and blue light blocking glasses and things like that. We almost all know that we need to be avoiding screen time and things like that at night. But why is it that we need to be avoiding blue light at night? Well, the reality is blue light is everywhere. It's in our environment. It comes from the sun. We see it all day long. And during the day, that blue light is really important. The reason that blue light is important during the day is because blue light receptors on the back of our retinas or on our eyes, those specific photoreceptors are going to respond to that wavelength of light that we see as blue on the visual spectrum. And that's going to actually decrease melatonin production. So a lot of us are familiar with melatonin. A lot of times we take melatonin. Many of you may be taking melatonin at night already to try to sleep. That's because melatonin increases in the evening, and that's our sleepy hormone. So melatonin, for the most part, helps us fall asleep. And if we don't have enough melatonin production, a lot of times that can have a negative impact on our ability to sleep. And what happens is during the day, if our melatonin levels were to stay high all day long, it makes us sleepy all throughout the day. And so the way our body responds to that is we see blue light. The blue light is going to suppress that melatonin production. That suppression of melatonin production with blue light after the sun rises is going to then cause an increase in cortisol production. So cortisol is our stress hormone. It's what gets us up, gets us energy, gets us moving throughout the day. It's very heavily involved in the stress response as well. But those two hormones work in tandem. So as cortisol comes up, melatonin comes down. And then as we get to the evening, melatonin is going to rise and cortisol is going to decrease. And so it's the suppression of melatonin production from the pineal gland in the brain as a result of blue light exposure that helps keep those melatonin levels down and increase cortisol levels. Now what happens is in ancient times, before we invented lights and everything, thank Thomas Edison for that, we didn't have blue light exposure after dark. So the sun started to go away, and what did we use at night? Campfires, right? And candlelight and things like that. And candlelight and campfires are both very warm colors. They're amber and the oranges and the reds and the yellows. There's not a lot of blue light or any blue light at all that comes out of a campfire or out of a candlelight. So when we were using those types of lighting sources, we weren't constantly exposing our eyes to blue light in the evening hours. So after the sun went down, those melatonin levels were naturally able to start rising again. The problem is with all of our technology and our everyday lights, the LED lights and incandescent lights, is that they excrete a lot of blue light. And so when the sun goes down, the lights come on, and that blue light production never really goes away. And so we constantly are suppressing that melatonin production, and that affects our sleep rhythms. So a couple things that we can start to do at nighttime to avoid this excessive blue light production or blue light exposure to our eyes at night is, number one, we can wear blue light blocking glasses. But that's kind of like supplements that we talked about earlier. It's just protecting the eyes from the blue light. It doesn't really fix the fact that there's all this blue light coming in around us. So what we really want to do is avoid the blue light exposure in the first place. So what we can start to do is obviously wear blue light blocking glasses once the sun goes down. We can make sure that we're not staring at computer screens and tablets and phones and TVs. We can make sure that the lights in the house are protecting our eyes. So what I do is during the day, I've got all the can lights and stuff in the ceiling going. Once the sun goes down, I really try not to use the main overhead lights, the LED lights that are in the ceiling. What I do is I have amber light bulbs that are in the floor lamps and in the nightstand lights in my bedroom. And so I never in the bedroom turn on the can lights at night. The can lights are only to be used during the day, and at night I have those warm amber colored bulbs that aren't going to be putting off as much blue light. So you can physically switch the light bulbs in a couple different lights in your house to those warmer amber colored bulbs. That's going to help significantly decrease the blue light exposure. If we're looking at phones and tablets and screens and things like that, obviously we can't just shut our phones off and our computers off as soon as the sun goes down every day and stop working. That wouldn't be very productive. But most of our modern technology does have blue light blocking filters on it. If yours doesn't, there's a couple different softwares that you can download onto your computers, like Flux, F.Lux, I believe, and Iris, I think, is the other one. But if you're using Mac products, they have night shift mode. So you'll notice that the screen starts to get a little bit warmer, starts to get a little bit more red as the sun goes down. That helps to suppress some of that blue light that's coming off. So the big thing is if we can't avoid the blue light, we want to wear the glasses to protect our eyes from it. Now, another common thing I see all the time is that people will wear blue light blocking glasses during the day. Now, we talked about blue light is really important for suppressing melatonin production, helping cortisol levels increase. So if we're wearing blue light blocking glasses during the day, that blue light during the day is very helpful for us. We don't want to be blocking it. So I never recommend people wear blue light blocking glasses during the day. The caveat is if we're very close to computer screens and we're staring at phones and screens and stuff all day long, put the blue light blocking glasses on while you're staring at your screen. As soon as you leave to go outside and move around, things like that, just take the blue light blocking glasses off, throw different glasses on, throw your contacts in, something like that. You may actually notice an increase in energy levels as soon as you take those glasses off because you are getting that blue light exposure. So blue light is the first type of light we want to avoid at night and increase during the day. The second type of light we're going to talk about is going to be first light and last light. So this is the first 45 minutes of light during the day, and then the last 45 minutes of light during the day, also known as sunrise and sunset. So we all know sunrises and sunsets, we get those beautiful warm colors, the ambers and the purples and the reds and yellows and oranges and things like that. So those wavelengths of light are actually very healing. A lot of people are also familiar with infrared saunas and infrared lights and red light therapy and all of that. So that specific wavelength of light actually can penetrate into the skin. It can be very anti-inflammatory. It can stimulate the healing process. It can help with nitrous oxide production and reduce blood pressure. So we all know we innately feel better when we go out and we watch the sunset or we watch the sunrise. You know you feel better, but it's actually a physiological response to the wavelengths of light that are coming out. So what you want to do is first thing in the morning, if you can get up and get outside and see the sunrise or see that light while the sun is still kind of in that low level, about 30 degrees from the horizon. So really the first 45 minutes, once the sun starts to rise past that 30 degree, we're going to get a lot more UV radiation and we're going to get a lot more of that blue light coming out of it. So really we want to try to get first 45 and last 45 minutes of light. Now, what those wavelengths of light will also do is help to anchor our circadian rhythm. So our circadian rhythm is what helps get us up in the morning and go to sleep at night. It's what regulates our sleep-wake cycle. So if we're struggling to wake up in the morning, if we're struggling to fall asleep, oftentimes that's because of circadian rhythm dysregulation. And one thing you can do to help anchor that circadian rhythm is see that first 45 minutes and the last 45 minutes of light. And that's free to do. It doesn't cost you any extra money to get outside and see the sunrise. A lot of people look through windows. Windows, unfortunately, they have glass that blocks a lot of those wavelengths of light, so we're not going to get the same beneficial effects of looking at the light if we don't get directly outside into that sunshine. So try to get outside within an hour of waking for at least 5 to 10 minutes. Try to see and visualize that light. One thing I'll never do is I never put my sunglasses on when I'm driving to work in the morning. I'm typically driving to work or the gym sometime around when the sun is coming up, and I want to get as much of that really helpful light into the back of my eyes as possible. So I roll my windows down and throw the sunroof back when I can, and I don't ever wear sunglasses. I just use the sunshade to come down so the sun's not blinding my eyes. So light can be a very, very powerful tool during the day. One of the other wavelengths of light we really want to see during the day is going to be that bright overhead light in the middle of the day. This is when the sun is at its peak. We have a ton of energy and photons and things that are coming from the light. Yes, there's going to be more UV radiation that can damage the skin and things like that. So we do want to be careful, but specifically with eye exposure, we want to make sure that we're getting at least some of that sunlight into the eyes. Now, obviously don't go stand outside in the middle of the day and stare up at the sun. Would never recommend that we do that. But if you're feeling groggy during the day, if you feel like you're getting energy crashes, things like that, you can go outside, no sunglasses on for 5 or 10 minutes and just get that bright light in the back of your eyes. You can do some air squats. It'll actually help to increase your cortisol levels a little bit and get you a little bit more energy. And then the more exposure that we have to light during the day, the natural sunlight coming into our eyes and into our bodies, actually the more tired we'll be at night. A lot of us know, if you go spend the whole day on the boat or at the beach, that's the best sleep you ever get in your whole life is when you come home from a long day at the beach. And a lot of that is because of all that sunlight exposure that we're getting and the effect that those photons have on the back of the eyes. So trying to get that midday light is really important as well. And then just as important is avoiding bright lights at night. So we talked specifically about blue lights, but just in general, we don't really want any bright light exposure at night. A lot of people wake up in the middle of the night, they have to go to the bathroom, things like that. Just try not to turn more lights on than you need to. So I always try to avoid turning any overhead lights on if I'm going to the bathroom in the middle of the night, something like that, because I don't want that bright light stimulation coming in that could then affect my ability to fall back asleep again afterwards. So that's the first thing, is light. And there's a lot of really cool ways that we can utilize light during the day to help support our sleep at night. So again, wake up, first hour, 5 to 10 minutes of light. That will help you fall asleep that night. So we can start to see how by the time we get into bed and put our head on the pillow, there's a lot of things we should have already done before we get to that point to help us with sleep. Next thing we'll talk about is protecting that last hour of sleep, that bedtime routine. One of the things that frustrates me more than almost anything else, especially when it comes to sleep, is people who have TVs in their bedroom. Now, I get it. I like watching TV at the end of the day to help kind of just turn my brain off and shut me down. But what I don't want you doing is putting the TV on in the bedroom. Reason for that is we want our bedroom to be our sanctuary. That's where we sleep. It's where we have intimacy. It's where we relax. It should not be where we stimulate the brain a ton, right? And so think about if your brain is expecting, as soon as you walk into the door, our brain is programmed. It sees these cues, these things that happen on a regular basis, so it can start to anticipate things and know what to expect. If we walk through the bedroom door and every single night we turn the TV on, then as soon as I get up and walk through that door, my brain is anticipating stimulation. If my brain's anticipating stimulation, I'm not also going to be able to fall asleep right after that. So we really want to make sure that we're not doing things in the bedroom or within that last hour that are stimulating the brain, creating any sort of cortisol response. So I always recommend no TVs in the bedroom. Really try to avoid difficult conversations, heavy work, heavy thought processing, brain things like that at night, specifically within that last hour, because it is going to help to start to increase cortisol levels and prevent us from being able to fall asleep. We can talk about a lot of things that help to kind of increase cortisol levels. I've got a whole other video on cortisol and how we can work to increase and decrease and manipulate our cortisol levels. So if you want to check that video out, we can link that in the comments below. But anything that we would do during the day that increases cortisol levels, we don't want to do at night. So one of the biggest things I see people that make mistakes of is exercising, and they exercise after they get off work. If you have to exercise at the end of the day, it should be very, very low intensity. We don't want any high intensity exercise in the evening that may spike those cortisol levels, because it may really have a negative impact on sleep and our ability to fall asleep at night, right? So we really want to protect that. So wear our blue light blocking glasses, avoid screen time in the bedroom, avoid high cortisol increasing conversations and stressful conversations, then avoid working on tasks at night that are going to really take a lot of brain power. One of the other things a lot of people want to just kind of start to bring themselves down, we can start to have these cues that when we do this, the brain now knows that it's getting ready for bed. Drinking a glass of warm tea, chamomile tea, something like that, that can be very calming. And it can also start the brain into that process of getting ready to calm down. 8 o'clock at night, we make a glass of tea, we sit down, we start relaxing, no more hard conversations, no more TV, no more bright lights, and the brain really starts to get into this bedtime zone, fall asleep zone, not this stimulation zone. So really make sure that we're protecting that last hour of sleep right before we go to bed. Let's talk about caffeine production. Now, drinking caffeine right now, it's also 11 o'clock in the morning when I'm filming this video, so it's okay to be drinking caffeine. There's a really common misconception that caffeine gives you energy, and that's not what happens at all. So what a lot of the new research has started to show is that during the day, we build up this hormone called adenosine. It's actually an amino acid. This adenosine builds up in the brain, and we have these receptors. And as adenosine levels start to rise, it starts to make us more and more sleepy and tired. And then at night, what happens is we start to clear all of that adenosine out of the body. So what caffeine does is, like I said, it does not give us energy. What caffeine actually does is it blocks those adenosine receptors, so our body does not feel tired. Now, a lot of people use caffeine to get through the day, and that's okay to some extent because sometimes we just have to get through the day. But if we're relying on caffeine every single day, we're not actually creating energy. We're just overriding our body's feeling of needing to sleep. So it's very important that we're not taking anything like caffeine that's going to alter the brain's receptors to adenosine and prevent us from them being able to fall asleep at night. It's also important to understand that if you feel like you have to rely on caffeine all day long, that we're just not sleeping enough, and that's a really good indicator that you should get more sleep. So again, caffeine, super cool, doesn't give us energy, just prevents us from feeling tired. And the way it does that is through the mechanism of adenosine receptors. Another really cool one that we don't think about a lot is actually the room temperature. So I have a lot of friends who keep their houses super warm. It's super warm in my office right now. I don't like it when it's super warm, and I definitely can't fall asleep when it's super warm. In our house, we have the AC set to 68 at night, and I've got the thermostat set on a schedule. So every single night, about an hour before bed, which we try to be asleep or in bed at least by 9 o'clock, so starting at 8 o'clock, that temperature comes down from 72 degrees down to 68 degrees. And there's actually a really cool underlying physiological mechanism that supports, and that's the decrease in body temperature. So our body temperature actually has to decrease by 1 to 2 degrees every single night in order for us to get into that really deep sleep. So if our air temperature in the bedroom is too high, it will kind of prevent that body temperature from dropping as much, and it could help to interrupt sleep. I hear people wake up all the time because they're too hot. It's not rare that people wake up because they're too cold. So think about that. The body temperature wants to be a couple degrees lower. So we want to make sure that we're setting our bedroom up again as that sanctuary to where we're supporting all of the chemical and physiological responses that have to happen at night. So dropping the temperature down a couple degrees in the evening can be very helpful. We also can then set the thermostat to bring the temperature up a couple degrees right before we wake up in the morning to help get us out of that sleep. It always sucks trying to get up in the morning when it's freezing cold and your bed is warm. So if we can bring that temperature up a little bit, help it make it easier to transition out of bed. That peak temperature decrease happens around 2 to 4 in the morning, and that's when we should be the deepest at sleep. And again, we want to make sure that that air temperature is dropping in the room to reflect that and to help support that. Next thing we'll get into is exercise. Exercise could be a whole big thing. There will be a whole nother video to follow on exercise specifically. But for the basis of this, what I want to just make sure is that we're doing some sort of physical activity every single day. It's pretty self-explanatory. The more energy you burn, the more of your energy you get out during the day, the better you're going to be able to sleep at night. We talked about the beach and going to the beach, and you get that sunlight exposure, and that helps us sleep at night. There's typically a lot more activity level that happens when we're going to the beach and things like that. So again, we're burning a lot more of that energy off throughout the day, can help us fall asleep at night. With exercise, really important, let's try to make sure we're not exercising in the evenings. If you're someone who really struggles to fall asleep because your brain is constantly go, 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 we want to make sure that our exercise is getting done in the morning. Now, in that video I referenced earlier, the cortisol crash course, I talk about how to utilize exercise to help with energy during the day. Do the opposite of what I talk about in that video. But at the very least, from an exercise standpoint, we want to make sure that we're getting at least 20 minutes every single day of intentional movement. Intentional movement doesn't have to be a hard lifting session at the gym. It doesn't have to be a run. It could be stretching. It could be meditation. It could be a walk. But it needs to be something where our intention is to move the body. And it needs to happen on a daily basis. Again, that's all I'll get to, other than the importance of avoiding exercise at night. Again, if you're someone who struggles to fall asleep, you normally work out in the morning, you miss it in the morning, don't try to make it up at the end of the day. Do something that you can still get out and move, but do something that's going to be more gentle, like yoga, like going for a walk and seeing the sunset, something like that that's not going to bring that cortisol level up, as it should be coming back down so that we can go to sleep. Next thing that we'll talk about here is, let's see, I lost my page here. So we'll talk about food. Now, there's a lot of controversial research on food that's actually contraindicating what we've always been taught. And so we'll talk about a couple different scenarios here where food can be utilized at night. So what we've always been told, I'm sure we've all heard this from our mothers or our grandmothers or passed down through generations, is that don't eat close to bedtime, right? For the most part, that's true. We don't want to eat big meals close to bedtime. One of the big reasons for that is that sleep is when our body heals and repairs and recovers. We want all of our energy at night dedicated towards that healing, integration, recovery period. And if we're eating a big meal, then for the first couple hours of the night, all of our energy is going towards digestion, which we don't really want to do. Eating a big meal also can create blood sugar spikes. That increase in sugar can increase cortisol and things like that, and that's going to also help us from falling asleep. Now, that sugar level kind of gets us into another phase of how we can utilize food to help us sleep at night. A lot of people with blood sugar dysregulation struggle with maintaining a normal fasting blood sugar. And so for someone who has big drops in blood sugar at night, a small meal of some carbohydrates can actually help to level that blood sugar off a little bit. We can also have a meal with some protein to help balance blood sugar a little bit at night, but it needs to be a very small, light snack. Now, there's some other foods out there that have some certain components and constituents in them, some certain compounds that actually help to support sleep. Now, there's a bunch of different compounds that can do that, but a lot of the foods that kind of come to mind are things like cherries, bananas, almonds, walnuts, kiwis, chamomile tea, a perfect example. So having a small amount of those types of foods at night before bed may actually be able to help us fall asleep. Now, talked about blood sugar. And if you eat a bunch of cherries or you eat a big banana right before bed, we have to also keep in mind that there may be some blood sugar fluctuations with that. So we want to do everything just understanding the underlying thought process of what's going on and how that's responding to the physiology. But some of those things, cherries, bananas, some nuts, kiwis, chamomile tea, may actually help us fall asleep. And again, the big thing, if you take nothing away from the food section, is let's just make sure we're not eating a huge meal right before bed. Another one is breathwork and meditation. Meditation can be one of the best things that we can do, a completely free tool to help us kind of calm down and come out of that sympathetic tone, out of that fight or flight response. Most of my people who I talk to who struggle to fall asleep at night, it's because they lay down in bed and their mind is just racing and go, 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 go. And so breathwork and meditation can really bring peace and kind of emptiness into the mind, which can help us kind of get those thoughts to turn off. There's a couple different things that we can do with breath work. I'll probably make another video on breath work in and of itself because it can be kind of a complicated process. But there's a couple different things that we can think of with breath work here, and there are a couple different ways to breathe. So we can breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. That's probably what we want to do most of the time at night before bed, because that in through the nose and out through the nose is going to be very deeply relaxing. Put us in more of that meditative state, create some calmness there. We can breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. In through the nose, out through the mouth is going to be better for our kind of affirmations, visualizations, attracting energy to ourselves. This is one that I like to do in the mornings. I'll do this a lot when I'm in the cold plunge and I'm visualizing my day, doing prayer and doing devotions and things like that. In the nose, out the mouth. And then we have another form of breath work, which would be in through the mouth and out through the mouth. This is going to be very amplifying of energy, a lot of power and creating a strong presence. This would be something where you know, if you want to go to the gym and get a hard workout in, and you think, I'm going to go do a bunch of bench presses, I'm in the mouth, out the mouth. If we're going to go do a presentation at work or into a big meeting or something like that, we need to kind of feel that energy. That's where we can use that in through the mouth, out through the mouth. But as it relates to sleep, for the most part, let's just make sure that we're trying to use more of that in through the nose, out through the nose, deep calmness. One of the other breathing patterns that you can do that is very helpful at helping to actually activate the parasympathetic nervous system and will physiologically downregulate your sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight or flight nervous system, is to breathe in through the nose. And then at the very end of your inhale, take another quick inhale and then breathe out through the mouth 3 times. So it'll be a quick inhale, another inhale at the top through the nose, and then out through the mouth. And it's going to be a and you do that 3 times, and that will bring you down. This is a great one to use throughout the day if you feel yourself getting really worked up. I've actually done this on the bike where I can control and see exactly how much power I'm putting out and what my heart rate is, and I'll change my breathing pattern to reflect that breathing pattern. I've actually seen my heart rate drop by 10 beats per minute doing the exact same amount of effort, just breathing like that. Which, if you think about it, that is incredible. If we can drop our heart rate by 10 beats per minute when we're riding a bike, we can extend the duration that we can ride significantly. And you can apply that into any aspect of your life. If you feel your blood pressure start to go up, if you feel your heart rate start to go up, if you are driving to work and someone cuts you off in traffic and throws you the middle finger and you just get into full-blown road rage mode, do a couple breaths like that and you will actually feel yourself calm down and go more into that parasympathetic pattern. Last one we'll talk about here is supplementation. So let's say we've done all the other things correctly, right? So we are avoiding blue light, we're protecting the last hour before sleep, and we're being very intentional in that last hour. We're seeing the first light and the last light, or the sunrise and the sunset. We're avoiding caffeine. We're decreasing our room temperature. We're getting at least 20 minutes of intentional movement or exercise every day. We're avoiding large meals at least 1 to 2 hours before bed, and we're doing our breath work and our meditation, and we still can't fall asleep. Now, this is where we can start to kind of fine tune and do some of the higher level stuff here. Now there's some supplementation and stuff that you can utilize to help support this, and we can kind of dive into what some of those supplements do. Most of them are going to be aimed or geared at kind of pulling back that sympathetic tone. So things like California poppy, kava, L-theanine, magnesium, CBD oil, alcidonia. I don't want to dive into the specifics. There's a lot of different things out there that you can try. The biggest thing is just everything's going to work differently for everybody. And so what works really well for one person may not work for another person. So it may take some trial and error to try to figure out which supplements specifically will work for you. And it may be that no supplements work for you. And it's because, again, something else is going on. We also have to consider the reason that we can't fall asleep and making sure that if there's some sort of stressor in our life that's constantly weighing on us, that we identify what that stressor is and work to deal with that in a healthy and an appropriate way. If there's something like a lot of women that struggle with hot flashes, if they're going through menopause, hot flashes are very common as those estrogen levels drop. We've got to figure out why the hot flashes are going on, why the estrogen levels are dropping, what's happening from a stress response in the body, and we've got to balance hormones out before we can help with sleep. Now, do you still have to have all these other things? You still have to lay a good, healthy groundwork? Yeah, absolutely. We can't just work on hormones and then you avoid all this other stuff and then you sleep better. Like, that's not going to happen. So we have to make sure that we're doing all this other stuff on the foundation first, and then we can start to tie in hormones. Maybe it's a thyroid issue. We have hyperthyroidism and we wake up every night, or it's hypothyroidism and we can't fall asleep at night. Maybe there's really bright lights or noises or babies and things like that that are kind of going on and we can't avoid those. So we've got to just understand that there are other components to sleep beyond what we're talking about in this video. This video is mainly aimed at just helping you get that groundwork and that foundation laid to set your body up for success when it comes to sleep. It's not going to guarantee that you can do these 8 things and instantly be able to sleep perfectly through the night. But if you do these 8 things, I think a lot of other stuff will get better and we'll get a lot of clarity of what the actual underlying causes are. And from that point, then we can start to dive in through testing and through deeper conversations and through other things and start to fine tune stuff. But what I see all the time, one of the biggest mistakes people make is they come into the office and they want to run all this blood testing and they want to take all these supplements and they want to do all the fine tuning, but they haven't laid that sturdy foundation. So let's make sure that we're utilizing some of these tools and some of this stuff to help build that strong foundation from which we can then start to build on in the future. So I hope this helps you guys. Again, if you have any questions, comment below. Feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. Like I said, there's a couple more videos that are going to be coming out following this. There's another video that I'll link in the comments below about that cortisol crash course. That video is already available on my YouTube channel. Feel free to comment any video ideas below or anything else that you guys would like to learn about, and I'd be more than happy to make a video about it. My goal is to help people achieve optimal health and performance by understanding what they need to do from a lifestyle standpoint and helping to dial in different things and different aspects of their health. I want to help everybody make as healthy and informed of decisions as they can when it comes to their health. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you learned a little bit. Take care and sleep well.